And we're going to be recording an episode of our podcast, which is called, Jake?
The Pooch. Oh,
the
sorry.
Pooch?
It's the Pouch.
The Pooch is the one that we do once a week, which is just about dogs.
Yeah, dogs and dog grooming.
Yeah, dogs and dog grooming, and we film ourselves watching the latest dog videos, the latest trending dog videos on YouTube, and we comment on them.
Yes. Yeah,
surprisingly, now that I've said that out loud, that would be an infinitely more popular podcast.
Well, Greg, count me in.
Hello and welcome to The Pouch, the noisy leaf blower of podcasts that helps the average Aussie try and make sense of their current political environment. I'm Greg. Could you please put your camera at eye level before jumping on national television, Savage?
And I'm Jake. Nostradamus should have predicted this, Far Wharton. On today's episode, we talk who funding or what funding. Yep. We also talk charges against Annika Smethurst, and we delve into coronavirus lockdowns possibly ending soon, but not.
So we are coming off the back of the recent press conference, the thing that everyone looks forward to, the recent press conference with Scott Morrison. So he spoke for about an hour, and it was pretty good. Like his, as far as parental condescension goes, it was pretty good. Like he was pretty proud of us as a nation. He was particularly proud of me. I remember he said, "Greg, I'm so proud of you. I can't wait to give you a hug." Yeah. And it felt good. Did you catch any of that at all? What just that recent live Facebook thing?
I did. Well, I watched it live on ABC, but not on Facebook. I should have watched it on Facebook. I did watch it on ABC, and I thought, it seems that things are positive, and it was good to have a definitive statement around, despite one of the stories that we'll get to today, that the lockdowns are not, or the social distancing requirements and laws, etc., are most certainly not going to end within the next 4 weeks. So he sort of said, we'll reevaluate in 4 weeks, but for the next 4 weeks, do expect them to remain exactly the same.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's pretty reasonable. He did say that if we all sort of stick to our guns and we keep doing what we're doing, it's possible that it could be earlier. And I really like the fact that he's able to say that. Again, makes me feel very, very lucky, I suppose, and proud that to be here in Australia and to be doing our bit as well, by staying home and doing what we can. But we have, you're right.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, look, the flip side of that is you don't want to get people's hopes up, because the end game here is not necessarily eradication.
My hopes are up, Jake. My hopes are up.
It's more how many people can we prevent from, either getting the illness or getting the illness and certainly dying from it. How many of those cases can we prevent while we wait for a vaccine? Yeah,
absolutely. And it's just nice to hear that we're all doing the right thing and that we're all in this together.
Especially you.
And especially me. Yeah, he definitely said, Greg, especially you. Without a doubt. Yeah.
Looked right down the barrel and said, Greg, I appreciate you.
Yes, that's right. That's what I heard anyway. That's what I hear every time Scott Morrison speaks. Says, Greg, I love you like a son. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Dad. And I cry. And it's just so lovely. It's just so lovely. All right. Now, Jake, we've heard all that before, but some of the things that we haven't heard, and particularly, I do like it when we get to talk about US politics, because I still have my finger on the pulse when it comes to US politics.
Yep.
But obviously the basis of this show is that we actually talk about Australian politics.
Yep.
But there is a big crossover at the moment, because Donald Trump has announced that he is going to be rescinding funding, temporarily stopping funding from the WHO, and a temporary measure to send a bit of a message to say, hey, we're not big fans of you. What's the word? Kowtowing? Cow tipping. Kowtowing.
Yeah. Kowtowing.
Kowtowing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's illegal.
It is. It's an imperialist tradition of getting down onto your knees and touching your face to the ground. Generally, you would do so in front of an emperor.
God, I love being on this podcast with you, Jake. I just need to carry you around in my pocket. I mean, I virtually do with the Apple Podcasts app.
Hey, Siri.
Of which everyone should subscribe immediately.
Hey, Jakey.
Now... yeah, stuff you, Siri. I've got Jake. But some coalition MPs here in Australia are suggesting that we should do the same sort of thing. Maybe that we should at least review Australia's WHO funding. So they're sort of, I guess they're banking on the fact that there's an undercurrent of people in Australia who are probably sitting back going, that's fantastic that Donald Trump took away that money from WHO. Yeah, you tell him Donald Trump. Like they're probably going along that line. What are your thoughts around this?
They're multifaceted, I would say. On the face of it, the World Health Organization does much more than just the controlling of and advice around pandemics. Frankly, I think they did an absolutely tremendous job of warning the world about the threat of the coronavirus. I think that their communication, their daily press conferences from, I wish I could remember his name, but the head of the World Health Organization, Gabriel Adhanom something Ghebreyesus, maybe. Anyway, yeah. I think his daily press conferences were absolutely tremendous, very straight to the point, talking about what countries should be doing, how citizens should be acting. I think that it was absolutely what we needed a few months ago. There were some specific things that people like Scott Morrison, our Prime Minister, had pointed to in this discussion around whether Australia should be reviewing our funding. Specifically, it was that, Australia referred to or called this a pandemic, or declared a pandemic well before the World Health Organization did so. And as a consequence, Australia shut our borders, shut our international borders, and called everyone to come home faster than the World Health Organization was calling for it. But there is this group, and this is the story essentially, this group of coalition backbenchers, people without portfolios who like to agitate from the back seat of Parliament, who have called for a review of Australia's funding to the World Health Organization, essentially following what Donald Trump has done. Of course, the US president announced his freeze on all payments to the World Health Organization. I'm just going to say WHO.
Yeah. If only there was a shorter way to say it.
If only there were. Essentially, they were accusing the United Nations offshoot of being too close to the Chinese government and severely mismanaging and covering up the threat. I don't know whether the latter half of that is, factual, but certainly this comes on the back of news that the WHO have allowed the Wuhan wet markets, the so-called wet markets, so the fish markets, and the mammal markets, to reopen. Now that they have had zero new cases of COVID. So, maybe it is not a bad idea. We've certainly got Scott Morrison saying that they would, from his perspective, this, it should always be reviewed. The Foreign Affairs Minister Maurice Payne said, pretty much the same sort of thing. But I think it's probably extraordinarily important to put that in perspective, that this is not their only function, that they do a tremendous amount more. And I think we probably do need to recognise that without an international body to both detect and coordinate responses to these types of, viruses or pandemics or epidemics, then how else are we going to know? Because governments don't always talk.
One of the biggest sort of events that got me questioning, the factuality of this situation was that video that went a bit viral, and it was a senior WHO official who raised hackles, apparently, in Taiwan by appearing to dodge questions about Taiwan's exclusion from the World Health Body. During an interview via video chat with a Hong Kong media outlet, Bruce Alwood, a Canadian epidemiologist,
yep,
remained silent for about 10 seconds when asked if the WHO should reconsider Taiwan's membership. After their video hookup appeared to be disconnected, the interviewer called him back. This time, Alwood declared that if he had contracted the coronavirus, he would want to be treated in China. When Alwood was asked what about Taiwan, he stalled for close to 10 seconds and avoided a reporter's question, but the reporter persisted. Alwood is an assistant director general at the WHO and is a Canadian-trained epidemiologist. Now, it was just bizarre that happened. And I don't know. Are we at a point where we just go, we appreciate some of the work that WHO does, but yes, they bend their knee to China, just like everyone else does? I don't know. Because we all do it.
Look, absolutely. We all do. Why? Because we like stuff. And much of the stuff is made in China. That was just weird. It was weird. It was despicable, frankly, as well. This is a long-term thing of the Chinese government. In one way or another, I'll use the term repress. They were, sort of how they repress the independent nation of Taiwan for seceding from the Chinese mainland. Both geographically and from a government perspective. So the interesting thing here is that the WHO, the World Health Organization, should be apolitical. So they should not be making any determinations about where someone should be treated based on their location, certainly not in this situation of Taiwan or China. If anything, the appropriate strategic response would be something that would be a matter for the Taiwanese government, or that would be a matter for the governments associated with that resident. It's not appropriate to be responding in a way that will flare up tensions, and moreover, it's probably telling of this epidemiologist's political savvy that he answered the question at all.
Now I said Jake not to read this one. How did you go with that?
I did not read that one.
Okay, so this is
I'm very excited about this.
So this is I'm excited too. All right, we've turned it into a bit of a game show, right? And if anyone's watching on Facebook, you feel free to join in. You can leave a comment, and I could bring it up on the screen. We're very interactive here at the Pouch.
Highly.
Now, so these are the questions that people have Googled, Australians have Googled during the pandemic. And I was going to see if you could guess some of them, right? So, what do you think?
Guess the question or guess the answer?
No, you got to guess the question.
Okay, all right, yep.
So, if you were an Australian, right?
Yep.
Which you are
most of the time.
Okay, well, I've got the top 5 in front of me. All right, so I'll give you 3 guesses. Okay, so you got 3 guesses. Actually, I'll give you 5 guesses. So you have a total. Okay. You have a total chance of 5 points.
Okay,
I've got my notebook and pen.
To me, I think number 1 has to be where can I get toilet paper?
That's not on there.
Oh, wow. Okay. Number 2 would be, what is the national cabinet? No? Okay.
I think a target maybe lower, like.
Okay, all right. Okay.
That might be a question you Google after you Google these other ones.
Okay, all right.
You know what I mean?
Worries. So
yeah.
I reckon one of them has to be, can coronavirus get me pregnant?
Indirectly. This whole lockdown business. I mean,
am I in the ballpark though?
No, you are not in the ballpark.
Okay, right, okay.
I'll give you a clue. Like some people enjoy this activity involving a fishing rod more so than
can I
pregnant.
go fishing?
Yes. Nice. All right, 1 point.
So,
can I go fishing? Yeah, that's the sort of level that we're looking at. not
so,
what is the national cabinet.
Am I eligible for the various worker payments? Or
That's a
various
good
payments?
one. I would pay that one. I'm going to give you half a point for that because it's not on there. But I'm going to give you. So you got 1.5 points, and I think this is your last one.
All right. I reckon for the last one, it would have to be something like, can I exercise? Or where can I exercise? Or something like that.
I would pay that one. I'll give you half a point for that one as well. I'll give you half a point for that one because that's a good one. That I'll give you half a point. So you get total of 2 points because I think that would be a reasonable one. It's probably in the top 10. So the top 5 are. Okay, so the number one question, Jake, is does Greg do his own hair? That was the number one question that people wanted to know during coronavirus. And the answer will surprise you.
Yeah.
Number one was, can you visit family during coronavirus? And it is not advised that you leave the house unless it is essential.
Yep. Yep.
The question number 2 was how many new cases of coronavirus in Australia today?
Right. Yep.
Can you go fishing during coronavirus?
Yeah.
When will lockdown end and how many deaths in Australia from coronavirus? They're the top 5 questions that people Googled. And if you want to know the answer to any of those, you can Google them.
Google it. Yeah.
Although that article comes from Perth Now, the newspaper Perth Now. Which, anyways, probably now that I've read that, it's probably Perth Now's most read article from today, with one view. No, Perth Now, big sponsor of the show. Charges against News Corp journalist Annika Smethurst.
Yep.
Still possible after High Court throws out AFP warrant. Now, this is a very interesting one. Yeah, this is all about a story that she ran last year.
No, a couple of years ago.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, she published it a couple of years ago, back in 2018, and the story itself was looking at information captured by the Australian Securities Directorate, which is a sort of our secret spy organisation within Australia. And she was publishing information about broad new powers that they were hoping to get a hold of.
Which turned out to be true.
Well, yes, it did. It did. But they were essentially, the AFP raided Annika Smethurst as well as a couple of ABC journalists in order to try and get hold of not just the source information, but the source of the source information. They were trying to essentially get hold of the whomever it was that leaked that information. But it is one of those things that if you as a journalist ever leak your sources, that's you done. You will never be trusted by another source ever again. So your ability to publish hard-hitting journalism essentially goes out the window with your loose tongue, as it were. But
this all boiled down to paperwork, didn't it? This all boiled down to the fact that they didn't fill in the paperwork correctly. This didn't have anything to do with the fact of whether it was legal or not legal to, whether what she did was illegal or not legal. That's not the point. Yeah. The point was that they just didn't fill in the paperwork correctly.
Ultimately, to the question of whether it is legal to publish information, generally speaking, as long as that information is in the public's interest, and there is sort of there's a bit of a pub test there, and this is why you have editors and editorial staff within newspapers. It's their job, as well as your legal team, to essentially determine whether a story is within the public interest, and therefore are you willing to take the heat of publishing. But the story has essentially come up because the High Court of Australia, the highest court in the land, has ruled that the warrant used by the Australian Federal Police to raid the News Corp recorder Annika Smethurst's Canberra home last year was invalid. essentially the full bench of the High Court earlier this week unanimously found that there was not enough precision in the drafting of the warrant, and they quashed the warrant. So to your point, yes, the wording in there was found to be, it seems that it was too broad, too vague.
Yeah.
And so the lawyer speaking on behalf of Annika Smethurst essentially said, look, you could have done anything with this freaking warrant, you know? You could have come in there, graffitied her house, brought in a dog to do the, what is it, the poo walk? That's not going to make it to the podcast.
I don't know what that is, Jake. Is this for the pooch?
Yeah, exactly. You know when dogs have worms and they scoot across
yeah.
A poot snoot.
I forgot that I was
could have done that.
I forgot that we were live streaming then and I acted it out.
I did. I did too. So that they could have done essentially anything with that warrant, and as a consequence, sorry, just a little bit of information into warrants. They are to be specific for what you are trying to do. So how you are attempting to do it, why you're doing it, you got to show reasonable cause in order to do it. And it just seems that unfortunately due consideration was not given in the filling out of that warrant to essentially enable it to be legal. So it's been quashed. What they have said, what the High Court have said, is essentially they would not, and there was a minority decision to either destroy or hand back over the USB stick of files copied from Smethurst's phone, and so there is the potential that the AFP could still use those files in a future prosecution of Smethurst in order to get a hold of her sources.
Speaking of an unfolding story, Jake.
Yes.
The coronavirus lockdowns could end in months. This is a story on ABC News. If Australians are willing to have their movements monitored. Now, this one is fascinating to me. I love this because, everyone is just up in they're constantly arguing with each other about whether or not they're going to have their movements monitored by the Australian government, and everyone has an opinion on this, which is why I love it. So this is basically an app that you'll be able to download in the next few weeks. I think it goes live in about 2 weeks, from what I've heard.
The Commonwealth are currently developing it. Yep.
Yeah, we bought it from Singapore.
No, so
Taiwan.
Singapore has an app very similar.
Yes.
But we're looking to replicate that type of technology.
And so we're going to have this app, and we're going to have the choice about whether or not we have our movements monitored, and it's going to alert us if we're near someone who has registered themselves as having had coronavirus. If we're in their vicinity for 15 minutes or something, maybe there's different. Maybe the app has different functions or something like that. But we all have to.
And moreover, it seems that if you have come into contact, so if you've got that app on your phone, and you spent 2 weeks ago, while you had the app on your phone, you spent 2 weeks ago. An hour, 2 hours with an individual who then shows up as positive, then your phone will be alerted also, which will, cause you to go and, it should be impetus for you to go and get tested. So, look, it is quite interesting. That question of civil liberties does come into the sphere of questioning when we think about things like this, because people are, particularly in Australia, pretty protective over the things that they do and say, etc. And as a consequence, we have not been huge, I would say, recipients of and advocates for these types of technologies in the past, mainly because, again, we like to be in control of the things we do. Yes. We don't necessarily want the government to be in control of those things.
No, but that's what I like about this, right? Is because it forces anyone who is just like, I would never hand my information over to the government, to actually suddenly be like, oh, maybe I might hand my information over to the government in this circumstance, And I think that I think it's a good it's a good experiment to see people go through those motions. Like what price are you willing to pay for your privacy? You know,
it's a good question.
And who you give your privacy to. I heard someone on the drum. I don't know who it was. You know, they have like 15 guests tonight, so I don't know who it was.
Yep.
But she said that Apple are developing something, that Google are developing something, so that we could.
Yep.
You could essentially get them to develop something similar, or at least a private enterprise to get them to develop something similar, and then that way you wouldn't be handing your data over to the government. You'd be handing it over to
that's even
to a private
worse,
enterprise.
Greg. That is
so
much worse.
It wasn't me that suggested it. All right, don't get angry at me, Jake. Or
No. I completely agree with you. It's so it's so funny that
we got an angry face, by the way, on the podcast. Someone gave us an angry face. We've gotten like 6 love hearts, but we've got an angry face. I think that was for me.
You know, maybe they hit that. Maybe they hit the wrong button. But no,
someone called Laura called us hot.
Who?
Is it Hotties? Laura
yeah, but,
on the comments.
Yeah, but which one?
No, she just said
there's
Hotties.
2 of us.
So there's Hotties. We both got one.
Oh, fantastic! Well, that makes me very happy. But the thing here is, it creeps me out to no degree that we would enable a private enterprise to gain access to so much of our data. And, you know, the federal government, like them, love them, hate them, abhor them, be very wary of them, you know, whatever your stance on the government, invariably they have laws that protect our data from a cybersecurity perspective, as well as from a data retention perspective. There are rules around what our private data can be used for. A private enterprise, you know, have you ever read one of those disclaimers? You know, you scroll to the bottom of 60 pages and it says, "Click here if you agree."
Yes, that's how I spend my weekend.
I knew it.
What else does everyone do when they're social distancing? Exercise?
Good question. Good question.
You're not fooling anyone.
It's creepy. It's super creepy.
Yeah, it is creepy, but it's also not. Like, if I'm honest, right? And I try to be honest. I try to be a good person when it comes to honesty, right? And if I'm honest, it doesn't bother me. I don't care. The Australian government can have my information.
Yeah, the Australian government. I'm talking more about the premise of a private enterprise having access to that, because you don't. Yeah,
but I also know Apple take it very seriously too. Like, Apple take their privacy very, very seriously.
Yep.
Like, you know, to the point where, like, Google Maps, right? If you go from one place to another place on Google Maps, it tracks the whole thing, right? Apple will delete the first part and the last part of your trip, so they don't know where you started or where you ended. That, you know, from their perspective, like, the app knows, obviously, but from their perspective, they take, and that's just one example. I'm not saying that's the be all and end all, but, like, I know that Apple take their privacy very seriously. I would have no problem giving my data over to Apple either.
Yep.
Because that's their whole mantra.
Yeah. Or do no evil.
I don't know.
Yes, of course. No, the Google's mantra.
We're going to get more angry faces soon. I can feel it. I can feel people.
Google.
I can feel their emojis coming
Seething.
on. They're going to get more angry faces. They go, "Well, Greg's just happy to hand over his daughter." Oh.
I'm not at all happy. I mean, while Google's mantra is do no evil, I frankly I can't personally conceive of what they would want to use or what they could conceptually use that data for. But, I don't want them selling it to a future healthcare provider or health insurance company that might determine that, back in 2020, I came into contact with someone with the coronavirus. Therefore, my current lung condition is a pre-existing condition and they won't cover me.
Yeah. That's kind of fair enough, but I mean, we don't know. I don't know what sort of data they're going to take. Like, is it just going to be my location data?
Yeah, it's probably very, very benign information. So it's probably something like your IMEI.
All information about me is benign. is mundane and benign.
I love it.
I understand, listeners, that's not a reason to keep, to move to get all my information and all that sort of stuff. And no, I'm not going to give you my address.
Well, it's funny when
but it is a benign address.
When a couple of years ago, when I was working in cybersecurity, I gave a lecture about the black market, and it's funny when you talk about the accessibility of. Maybe I just gave away too much information about about my anyway. There you might need to delete that from everywhere.
Keep going. No, keep going. Tell us about the dark web, Jake.
Yeah, so it's funny. On the dark web, you can pick up a credit card in bulk for around $1 US, right? But the cost of someone's personal information, so their name, their address, their age, that sort of information, social security or Medicare, that type of identifying data, that stuff is worth around $30 to $50, upwards of $100. I haven't kept
haven't done the math.
Kept in contact. So, well, I don't know what it's worth now, but it was certainly over $50 then. And people buy that stuff in bulk. So that's why I fear companies like Google or Apple or Facebook or whatever. I mean, while they might have adequate, if not excellent, data storage and cybersecurity standards, there is always the risk of a breach with a private company, particularly a private company that stores their stuff in big data warehouses and in clouds. Whereas the Australian government, much the same as most state governments, have a onshore data retention policy, so nothing goes overseas. Anyway, that's my rant.
All right. No, that's good. It's good to have someone who knows their stuff rather than just saying, my information's benign, so they can have it.
Well, it may very well be, but that benign information is worth money to someone.
Well, I'm happy. They don't need to go to a third party for that. They can just come to me directly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just send me an email and say, can I have your credit card details? I'll give you $50. All right. The magic number is 40%. Right? We need 40% of people to sign up for this thing. That's 4 out of 10, Jake.
Yep.
You heard it here first.
4 out of 10. 40%.
That's 40 out of 100. Do you think that we're going to get 4 out of 10 people signing up for this?
Today?
Let's place your bets.
Yes. I would say that around 41% of people will sign up for this, and they will all be the same early adopters that are the first ones that turn up to the Apple Store on new Apple iPhone Day.
Why that connection? That's a bit brutal.
Well, look, it's
I didn't
a new
realize
app.
that was a subsection of society that we were vilifying.
Early adopters, absolutely not vilifying. Just we use them. They are our first child. Our beta testers. They are the ones that we test out our parenting on.
Fair enough. I'm writing it down. Your bet is 41%. You reckon 41% of people?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 67.
Okay.
Well, Jake, for the 5th time, thank you so much for chatting with me today about all things to do with the AFP. We haven't touched on the AFP yet. And I'm not sure that's completely legal, but we did touch on the AFP. And thanks for playing my game about guessing what are the most Googled questions. That was fun.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a really fun episode, I think.
I think we should do that again. I think we should do that.
I agree.
I think we should definitely have a guessing game again because it certainly reveals a lot about you, Jake.
It really does.
And
how hard I tried to not click on a link that you asked me to not click on.
Yeah, I had it highlighted. Do not click on this. It was a test of friendship and you passed. Now, Jake, once our lovely, lovely listeners have finished doing nothing and being nowhere to save the planet, what would you like them to do?
I would love it if they subscribed to the show and rated and reviewed it, because it really does help people to find our show.
Absolutely. And the more people that find it, the merrier we are, which is very, very important. Jake, I hope you have a merry little week, and I look forward to speaking to you again before too long.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, listeners.
Before too long, something and something, something and something. I have a dog in the background.
You sure
fun.
do. Oh, the look on your face.
It makes for great live broadcasting. Our numbers are going through the roof.
Yeah.
This is a live broadcast of Greg's neighbor's dog barking in the background. Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, it'll go great on our sister podcast, The Pooch.